Go ahead. Start the meeting. Start the meeting, call out my mom, suspend me, do whatever you think that you have to do to make this right. But I'm not going to sit here and apologize or feel like I need to explain myself to someone who doesn't understand. Yes, someone who doesn't understand. I can see the look on your face. You think that I know that you don't support this? The problem is, you do. Whether you think so or not, you do. The problem is, Mr. Shepard, that no matter what, whether you think you support this law or you think you don't, you never came forward and talked about it. I don't see you out there fighting. I don't see you out there educating all of my fellow classmates that this isn't right. So don't sit there and tell me that you don't support this if you do. I'm not going to apologize for writing my paper. My teacher told me that I could write whatever I wanted, Mr. Shepard, and I'm not going to sit here and apologize for writing about something that affected me. Something that now I realize I can't ever take back. Because nobody wins. And you can read that in my paper if you really wanted to take the time. And that is a well-written paper, sir. I took a long time making sure that every single source and every single idea was exactly perfect. So, read it. Or better yet, I'll do you one better. I'll read a page from my notes. In conclusion, FERPA is a ghost of an institution. It is a skeleton at best. It does not protect its students and simply protects institutions from having to share data that they don't want to share. It is a cover story. It is not for the people. You can read it right here. All of my data, all of my information. It's laid out 10 pages long. Read it, and I promise you'll understand that I did nothing wrong, Mr. Shepard. Read it, and you'll find out exactly what happened to me. How FERPA doesn't protect its students. The fact that there are laws like COPA that need to be introduced so that way younger kids aren't targeted the same way that we're targeted. You can read it all in there, Mr. Shepard. There shouldn't be a separate law to protect younger children. I'm 17 years old and all of my information is getting handed out to my parents like it's free for all. Look in that paper, Mr. Shepard, and read about how I got my college acceptance withdrawn because I had one detention notice. I was told my acceptance was being withdrawn because of misbehavior. So I told my mom. And you know what she did, Mr. Shepard? She came down here to request to see what was in my record that would have told her that I was misbehaving. Because she wanted to know why her little girl wasn't going to college. You know what she didn't find out, Mr. Shepard? She didn't find out what it said about how I got misbehavior on my record. What she did find out, Mr. Shepard? She found out information that I told to a guidance counselor. She found out that I participate in an LGBT club. Now you tell me, Mr. Shepard, how that information has anything to do with my mother and how me getting detention has nothing to do with her. Tell me, Mr. Shepard, why it's important that anybody knows that I participate in those clubs. Tell me why my privacy is just a joke to you, Mr. Shepard, and I will tell you why I wrote that paper. I wrote it because it is a joke, Mr. Shepard. FERPA and all these other laws that everybody hides behind are a joke. They're outdated, unprotected. And the fact that you cannot file a lawsuit with them anonymously shows that they don't value your privacy. Because me as a 17-year-old girl should be able to fight for myself and keep it private. If I was 12, I would expect the same consideration, but no. It's not an option, is it? If FERPA was good, Mr. Shepard, you would hear more cases about people winning. But there are none of those, are there? Everybody just sits around and covers everything up instead of fighting for what really happened. Because like I said in the beginning, Mr. Shepard, it's a skeleton of a law. It doesn't even talk about the internet, Mr. Shepard. It doesn't talk about how I, out of nowhere, get a whole bunch of emails from colleges. It doesn't talk about how I get a discount on my insurance when I first got a car. I want to know where that information is going, Mr. Shepard. But I'll probably never find out, will I? Because you see, Mr. Shepard, the only thing that I can do to fight this is to get out of the school. All of the schools. So yeah, I got my college acceptance withdrawn, Mr. Shepard. But maybe I won't go to college. Maybe I'll make a career fighting an institution that's supposed to be protecting children, Mr. Shepard. Children. And everybody just sits around and does nothing about it, doesn't talk about it, doesn't tell people what's wrong with it. It's pretty clear what's wrong with it, Mr. Shepard, because if you Google problems with FERPA, a laundry list of issues show up. Laundry list, Mr. Shepard. So maybe instead of going to college like everybody else, since that route was ruined for me, I'll make a career fighting this institution. I will fight for reasonable accommodations if a child does not want to be using the internet so that way your sources can't mine her. I'll fight for testing companies to be limited on how they can use information, and I will fight to make sure that every time that a third party is using my child's information in the future, that they cannot share it with anybody else. Because let's face it, Mr. Shepard, no one's making sure that they're not. There's a lot of things that we could do, Mr. Shepard, but if for some reason somebody steps in and they just fight just a little bit, Mr. Shepard, they're not changing it because no one is fighting, because no one is educated, Mr. Shepard, and that is the problem. I shouldn't not want to go to school so that way I can be safe. I should have reasonable accommodations, Mr. Shepard. And my personal information, like clubs that I attend, should not be available to my mother, Mr. Shepard. Because that information has nothing to do with her. And it has nothing to do with what could possibly make me a future career or what could possibly get me into a good college. And the information that canceled my college acceptance. For some reason, we just can't see that. Apparently, it's not there. So yes, Mr. Shepard, I will fight this. I will fight to amend FERPA until the day I die, because I will not sit around and let my child go through what I went through. We've gone through many generations, Mr. Shepherd, of no one speaking, no one talking, no one standing up for this. But not me. Not this generation. I will get every one of those classmates in here and we will fight this, Mr. Shepherd. And I know that you do not make this law, but sitting here and not telling me my rights and that something happened that was wrong, that's the problem, Mr. Shepherd. Sitting here and telling me that I might get suspended for writing a paper about the truth that happened to me is wrong, Mr. Shepherd. And I won't take it. So you do whatever you want, Mr. Shepherd. I realize that some sources of data are good, but that's not the problem. The problem is that there are too many bad sources, Mr. Shepherd, and somebody needed to shed light on that. Just so you know, Mr. Shepherd, I published a copy of that online, so everyone in the school will know. Everyone in this generation will know. And we will fight, Mr. Shepherd. So you do whatever you need to. You suspend me. You put that in my records along with all the other misbehaviors that I apparently have. Send it off to all the other colleges I might want to attend one day and ruin my chance at those two. Go send it to my mom and let her know how much of a failure I am. How much I've disappointed her. But the one thing that you can't do, Mr. Shepherd, is stop the fight that has ignited in me.